Yo, we're back. Back
Hello.
online with Mr. Beat, the infamous. Yeah.
I'm glad
The,
to be here. Thanks for having me. This is cool.
nah, it's cool to have you. I was I watched I was looking at that video of you at the DNC and the guy that kind of came up to you and gave you a big hug and said, "Man, I've been watching you since middle school and I'm 23 now," or something.
Yeah.
That's got to feel really cool.
Possible freeze. So, now you're back. There you go.
Yeah. All right, man. So how often does that happen to you?
Well, it depends on where I'm at. I live in Kansas City area. So anytime I'm in the Kansas City area, a lot of people around here know that I live here, so I get recognized more. And then, I think the Democratic National Convention made sense because so many political science nerds were in one spot, and I think my viewers lean a little bit to the left generally, so that made more sense too. And then I remember when I went to DC, I got recognized, and I was like, okay, this is another spot where a lot of political science nerds all hang out. So, but yeah, I'm still technically a Z-list celebrity, so I'm not going to recognize that much.
Yeah, Z-list. I would say I'm kind of a Z-list one as well.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. It's kind of I mean, it's nice once in a while to talk to people, because you get to find out what they're getting out of the videos and what it
Yeah,
means to them and so on. I like that.
absolutely. And like, they're always interesting. They're it's like, oh, you're into the same stuff I am. Yeah, let's talk. I never get to talk about this stuff with any of my friends or family. They all think I'm boring when I talk about this stuff.
Yeah, you get a real job. Hey, so you were a high school teacher?
Yes. Before that, middle school, but for 12 years, I was in the classroom. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And what led you to? Well, I should say first off to anyone who's tuning in. I mean, well, hang on. Why don't you explain what you do and what your YouTube work is about?
Yeah, I make history videos, primarily American history, more specifically American political history. That's my probably my niche and what I enjoy the most. But I also sometimes make economics videos or geography. I used to teach various subjects when I taught in high school and middle school, everything from government to AP US history to world history. I mean, that's kind of why my earliest videos, if you watch them, they're still up. I probably should take them down because they're kind of embarrassing, but they were just purely curriculum based. There was just stuff that students needed to learn learn standards, state-based school district standards, and other teachers started playing my videos for their students. And then from there, I just kind of gathered an audience online. It's kind of like with you where, I mean, it's kind of crazy how many extra students you picked up putting it all on YouTube, being so open with it, because a lot of people out there, this is such uplifting news to find out so many people are out there are just curious. They're learning for fun. I just think there were that many people out there that were learning for fun. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's surprising actually. Given how school just sort of beats us down, and then people actually want to go back to school, but on their own terms.
Right.
Who's your audience? Like, what's the average age of your audience?
Well, I think most of the folks who watch my channel are probably between 15 and 35. So generally younger, which is another inspiring thing for me, because they're the ones who are going to be running things later on. So I hope that they're informed about basic civics and whatnot. And when I go out to I do events occasionally, and usually it is younger folks, but I think that's what's weird is that typically you think of people really passionate about history, just doing stuff like visiting museums and historical sites along on road trips or whatever. Usually think of them being older, And so it's been kind of cool when I do events, and the people that run the events, they expect an older crowd, and there's the older folks that do show up, but then they see all these kids show up and they're like, what the heck is going on here? So that's really neat to see.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Our average age is older, I will say. It's generally not high school and college students and so on. Yeah, which is equally as interesting, you know, for me, and uplifting, actually.
Yeah, it's like they never got it before. They're
Yeah, or
better late
they,
than never.
yeah, it's like,
One of the things you said in class before was you enjoy the fact that it's a lot of older people who join because they want to hear what young people are saying. And a lot of times the media portrays them in a particular way, and then they hear our students talking in class, and it's like, that's not what the media's been portraying. Like, that's not the story we've been hearing or the expectations we had. Like, sometimes we'll have students who have an opinion, or they say, like, Sam will ask them a question: what percentage of the U.S. is Muslim, for example? You asked this past semester, and Muslim students were saying like 15 to 30%, and then they got it wrong. And Sam asked them, "How does it feel to be, wrong?" And they were like, "I just never really thought about it." And that's something that, like, I think older people who watch our channel sometimes think, like, no, as soon as they hear contradictory information to what they believe, then they just ignore it. And it's like, no, these students aren't ignoring it. They're taking it in as new information, and now they're going to be confused and have to think about things in a different way.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's, in a way, I think a lot of that is what happens with you, Matt, that you're, you're you pick out things that are kind of like me. I notice in your videos, you pick out things that you're like, that are in a way kind of shocking, that I mean, yeah, walk me through that. So let me tell you what I do, and then let me hear about you. But when I encounter some factoid or some event or data or something that kind of shocks me, then I'm like, whoa, that's really surprising. That's the kind of thing that I'll bring into the classroom or build something around that. Does that sound like it seems like how you operate also?
Generally, yeah. I kind of follow my own curiosity, and I still have about a third of my videos, when I make them, I am anticipating that they will be primarily shown in classrooms and fit curriculums. And so I still have that. I mean, I have a list of videos specifically that I know that I was searching for a video when I was teaching it in the classroom, and I couldn't find a good one. And so that's why I'm making those still. But then, yeah, like the other 2/3 is based on my own curiosity and the curiosity of my viewers. And yeah, like my jaywalking video that I just released a few days ago is a good example of what you're saying. Like, oh, this is shocking how it became illegal. Like, who would have known? And I think that's kind of just one way to you reel them in with that stuff. But then once you get them into the story on the video, in your case, like into the discussion, you can you can teach them a lot more than that. Which it's always about tricking the audience into learning. That's always the goal. Doing whatever you can to get they don't even realize they're learning. Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. And of course, that's what I'm doing. I'm assuming that's what you're doing. That's why you're in it, right? Hey, tell me something about I just saw something pop up in the chat about your Mormon video. Did you did a video on Mormonism?
Yes.
Did you get pushback on that?
Oh, I got pushback by Mormons. Yes.
Yeah. What'd they say?
Well, like,
or what'd you say, actually?
I think the thing that really triggered them the most was I framed Joseph Smith as a con artist, which, if you just looking at him purely through a historian lens, he was convicted of fraud and trial. Like, he was actually convicted of it. It's not like I mean, you could say maybe I could have framed it a little bit differently to be nicer. Whenever you are, looking at history, you're going to offend somebody because we all have our own histories we like to promote. And I mean, myself included, I was raised Catholic, and I'm always a little bit more defensive towards people who, attack the Pope or whatever. And it's our own bias because it's tied so closely to our identities. And yeah, like I can understand why people would be offended, because
Yeah.
the difference with Mormonism that I think we really can't downplay, it's well documented.
Yeah.
Unlike earlier religions, we have overwhelming evidence. In fact, there's so much evidence that it's difficult to even begin to go through all of it.
Yeah.
LDS Church has been really good about making it available, but still, it's like, so yeah, you can't really. It's not like early Judaism or Christianity or Islam where you just don't have a whole lot to go off of as a historian.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it becomes it is really odd that there are these things like that in the world that happen, that are facts, that are right there, and yet when we overlook them, and sometimes I find myself going like, whoa, wait, go back here, man. We got to go back and look at this, and but once the like things have passed, it's passed, like this hip hop artist Chris Brown, right? Who, man, just like has done so many awful things
I was gonna
toward
say,
women.
yes.
But
every time one of his songs comes up, I always think about that.
it's so much. But he didn't get canceled, 12 years ago or whenever it was. That he absolutely would have just been like, all right, this guy is just trash and we need to be done with him, right? And once it kind of like didn't happen there, it's almost as though it builds layers of Teflon around somebody, and then it just can't happen, So anyway, it's an odd thing. There's probably a word for that, historically speaking. So, but but let's go to this, right? So you're doing a video like this. Like when I'm doing a video like this, I'm always I'm thinking about people in that group watching, or when I'm in class, and usually someone in class represents. So I'm like just thinking constantly, how can I say this without being offensive, or being the absolute least offensive I can possibly be? How does that work for you?
I think what helps me is using active voice whenever possible and saying that historians say this, or this person said that, versus me saying something. I try to pass it on to like somebody that's better than me, which is pretty much everyone. So I mean, it's easy. Like, oh yeah, I also need to remind my audience constantly that yes, I'm biased, but also like I don't specialize in history. I try to specialize in communication of a very niche type of history.
Yeah.
And then so like if you frame it that way, and also knowing that if they want to learn more, providing them resources, always giving them links to where you got your information from, as specific as possible. Like I annotate my scripts now, and they can see sometimes footnotes for if I say something that might be a little bit contentious or, but it's always a wild ride. I make mistakes. I think at a certain point, I've been doing this now. I've been making history videos really since 2009. And I think that I've made few mistakes compared to how many times I've got it right by this point. And so I think I've finally began to earn a little bit of credibility. It's like, you as a professor, like it takes a while before you kind of gain that reputation as someone that students can just fully trust that, they're the expert and I need to just trust them.
Yeah. Well, for me, it works out well because I see myself in the way you see yourself, right? Like the common word I use to describe myself is I'm kind of a knucklehead, just trying to work my way through all of this, and that I don't know. But it's a little bit different for me. You as a historian, you can kind of select out these facts, but it's the ones you select out that can be framed in certain ways, right? So you got to be as fair and honest and true to be trying to stay in the center as much as possible, and tell a story that's a fair story, right? And I can just grab facts from anywhere, and I don't have to follow even some line of logic. I can just say stuff, right? And I try, and I don't do that. I did that when I was young, but I don't do it now. And I try to be fair to a story that makes sense. When you so I'm thinking about this, right? How often? So how many people in the LDS responded to you on that particular video?
Well, I had there was another YouTuber that LDS YouTuber that made a reaction video, and so I got a flood of comments from that after that, and you know, a few emails probably. But I've gotten backlash before from different groups. Typically, it's when I do cover something a little bit more controversial, like I did kind of in a different direction. I did a video about the Great Replacement theory, and boy, the comment section of that is that's a show.
Yeah, yeah, I'll bet, man.
Tread lightly. And I've never been shy from. I kind of embrace the controversial topics. I like to get people riled up. I really do. Like even in person, that's why it's hard for me not to talk politics around family, around the holidays. Because I think this stuff is.
Wait, hang on.
We're doing or why things are the way they are.
Yeah, you froze up, but all right, that's all right. You're here. Well, when people responded, did you? I mean, did you engage again, or do you just sort of move on?
I mostly move on because.
Oh man.
And there was one detail I definitely was guilty of conjecture a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I made a conclusion about something I probably shouldn't have made a conclusion about because the evidence was there, but it wasn't like bulletproof. And I was like, okay, that was too much. That was too bold of an assertion. So yeah, I put in a pinned comment that I made that mistake. But there's other stuff where it's pretty clear, like especially if they're attacking me as a person. Like the person who did the reaction video, at the end of the video, they were like just going through all of my comments, my responses. And then they started saying, oh, well, I think Mr. Beat might be going through something personally. Maybe that's why he believes this way. Like this person they don't know who I am.
Yeah.
Making
That's
assumptions about me as a person. So that, to me, that came across as bad faith. And that if you're bad faith, I will not engage with you.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think that it's hard, right? Like, for me, I'm trying to do the best that I can, and when we're in this world of really pretty highly contentious issues, it's very difficult, man. It's easy to trip up and stumble and make mistakes and say something wrong, and then get hammered, which I understand, But when you did like the Great Replacement theory, that man, you're just going to get hammered on that. That's going to just call out an extreme, like people with very extreme views, right? Did you know you were going to get hammered on it?
Yeah, because I had previously done an anti-Semitism video, and it was a similar comment section. And I try to keep the comments open as much as I can because I don't know, as long as they're not harassing anyone, I don't think. Also, it's kind of a good place for the to be monitored by the authorities. Maybe if you have somebody who's pretty radicalized, might want to keep an eye on them so they don't do something violent.
Yeah, but it's also good to be monitored. I mean, one of the things for me that when I'm in class, it's good for me to be in front of a live group, right? So having those 750 or so people sitting in that room, that means that I'm really speaking right to two individuals, right? So I can't forget that. Sometimes on a microphone, when I'm just here in my office, I can forget that I'm speaking to real people, and then I can maybe say something that I wouldn't say if I were in front of a large group.
Yep, that's the problem with just being in a room by yourself recording, for sure.
Yeah, and for you, you're actually, I mean, you're not doing anything live off the cuff, right? Most everything you do is scripted at some level.
Yeah, mostly.
Uh-huh.
So it's I tried to also to have others read over my scripts before I say anything, especially if it's a group that I'm, like when I made a video comparing Israel and Palestine, which, by the way, I released it exactly a year exactly a year before the October 7th attacks.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody from Palestine read over the script and give me feedback. I had another friend from Israel read over the script and give me feedback. So that helps a lot when I can get somebody who's more, intimate with the information. But it's never, I think the most important thing is I'm coming at it in good faith. The purpose of my videos is to inform. Sometimes I try to entertain, to trick you to being informed. Other times I will make sure I say, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
Like in my tariffs video, I said this, I personally think tariffs are not the best idea. But I then went on to say, here's why some people say that tariffs might be needed sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's just always important people know where you're coming from. That's also why I did a 3-hour live stream of me just taking political tests. So they can see like how I rationally I'm kind of working through it. They can see a little peek behind the curtain, and that way they know, like, whenever they watch a Mr. Beat video, this is where I'm coming from, how I interpret it because of these political biases. Yeah. But do they know? Do your students know where you are politically? I mean,
yeah, they know that I'm
watching you. It seems like I would not be able to predict where you or how you vote.
Yeah, no, they don't. They're as confused as I am.
I love that.
I feel like I can take any position, really, and yeah, increasingly. I mean, there are certain things that I can't take a position and say, hey, there's a great replacement going on, and the certain groups are behind. I mean, there's certain things that I'm just like, no, come on, man, that's not happening. And I'm reasonably certain that I'm right. But who knows, man? Fuck, I don't know. But I'll always stop and say, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to find something out and go like, oh my God, like really, Lori has this idea, my wife, that, like, and she had this when Obama was sworn in 2008. And she said, I feel like, I've never thought this before, but I feel like right after they swore him in, they took him back into some room somewhere and they said, all right, dude, in the Capitol building, right there, right off the veranda. And they said, okay, now we're going to tell you who's really in charge, man. Yeah. And they just laid it out for 10 minutes, and he left and he went out and partied all night, and it just feels like, oh my God. I mean, obviously she's being really funny and we were laughing about it, but I don't know. It seems like I could make a reasonable case that actually happened, and it happens with every president, but I couldn't make a reasonable case, but you know what I mean? The point is I'm open to anything being possible.
I think since World War II that certainly you can make a reasonable case. I mean, you look at what we generally call we call it the deep state. I know that means a bunch of different things to different people. I'm going to make a video about it. Actually, it's coming out here in a couple of months. But there is like truth to that. The executive branch has expanded in size and scope dramatically since World War II, especially, and the New Deal. And so, if you're trying to compare somebody like John Adams, who's enforcing the censorship, putting people in prison for printing certain things in newspapers. And I know today we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. But at the same time, he didn't have the apparatus that the modern president has. Yeah. So today, if we had a John Adams try to do that, it would truly be terrifying. So I get it. I mean, and that's also a big part of the appeal of Trump. So I totally understand that. Like, he is the closest we've gotten to an outsider getting in there.
Yep. Yep.
Obama was
Absolutely.
supposed to be, but yeah, like you said, maybe Obama was just like, my hands are tied, guys.
I thought I was an outsider, but these guys just took me in the back room,
I
that
wasn't.
windowless, soundproof room for 10 minutes, and they let me know what's actually going on. Who are those guys? I don't know. I don't know who they were, man. They were just wearing these trench coats, and they just,
Well, but also I always counter this by saying it's really difficult to get two people to agree on anything.
yeah, that's
So
right, man.
there's a
right.
lot of disagreements within the executive branch and within these organizations.
Yeah,
like even
that's
within
right.
the FBI, like there's tons of disagreement. There's
Yep.
power dynamics. Yeah. So I don't think it's never as nefarious as we think, because
Yep.
there's just constant checks and balances going on.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And, and things might spiral downwards very, very quickly. And all of us go like, oh my God, this might be the end of everything, but probably not. And it's really mostly, yeah, we balance things out, going back to something, I don't feel like, so first off, I really am a pretty confused person, right? Like I can come through and I have all sorts of thoughts and ideas and a lot of pretty thoughtful clarity about how to see things, right? But it's very difficult for me because I can see things from so many different directions. It's hard for me to pick one. So I never preface anything by saying, hey, this is just my opinion, because I feel like I don't have any opinions. The moment I have one, I can just have a different one. And in fact, my wife laughs at me because many people do, my students do, people on the stream do, I'm sure. But I start making one argument and halfway through, I'll just switch and make a completely different one because I just changed my mind, And
yeah, no, the older I get, the more I'm like that as well.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
should do
maybe.
another live stream to update my political views, how much they've changed in the past 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I certainly used to be, when I first started teaching, I was very much on the left, but I was largely on the left because I came of age. I came of sort of a consciousness and awareness under Reagan in the 80s. And then I was a Latin Americanist. So, I studied all the nefarious things the U.S. had been doing in Latin America, and then also in East Asia. And, like naturally, as a person on the left who is critiquing power in the state and government and the United States and foreign policy and one thing after another. So that just kind of put me on the left, right? But then I start moving back to the center, but that's where I was for quite a number of years, just as a way to formulate a critique of power, yeah, in the state apparatus and so on. Does that make sense for you as a
Yeah,
historian?
absolutely. Oftentimes people that lean to the left will tell you that, yeah, I'm always just against whoever's in power. But the fact is, a lot of the times when, their side is in power, then they're like, oh, you're a lot quieter now.
Yeah, that's right.
About all the drone bombs during Obama's presidency, but now you're speaking up about it when Trump's doing it. So like I get to me, I think it's just healthy to always be cynical about anyone who's in power. Like, this is what I've always been fascinated with politics, is like there should not be such stark hierarchies, I think. And I know this is kind of a wild thing to say, because our hierarchies are actually fairly rigid, in my opinion. I think we just assume that, like one guy should have all this power. The president of the United States.
Yeah.
It's insane to me how much power they have, especially compared to how they used to have in the early days of the country. It doesn't matter who's in there, as far as I'm concerned. We should be constantly keeping them on their toes and questioning everything they do. It shouldn't be left right thing. Just anybody who has too much power.
Yeah, this is interesting, just hearing you say that, right? So speaking with you as a person who studies that, right, has studied it, way more than the vast majority of. So all except really probably pretty much a handful of people. Let's be clear about that. Like, it just shifts. That comment you just made changes everything, because you're looking at it historically and going like, wait, we got to look through today. We got to look at today through the lens of the past, and that really matters. And it matters for how we see things and what we think is happening. Yeah, that's pretty. Okay, so here I have another one. Okay, how often do you have people sending you emails with suggesting topics for you?
Every day.
Yeah.
I don't mind
Yeah.
it though. Like, I just add it to my spreadsheet, my massive spreadsheet. I'll never get all of them done, but I can try.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I get a lot of stuff. I mean, I get emails every day. We get them, and I have ideas for classes. In fact, opinionated Matt, who you'll see in the comment section, just sent me a really cool thing, and I just have yet to respond. But yeah, I get a lot of stuff. It's nice actually. I don't get as much as I would like, though, to be honest with you. Like, got to come up with these topics all the time, and in a way, it's easier for me. Like, you're putting a whole video together with a script and everything. Man, it's just an immense amount of work. And for me, I just got to get students to talk, and that just makes things go a little easier.
That seems more difficult to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've gone to the streets for some videos too, or people just walking by and it's like, hey, you want to be in a Mr. Beat video, and can I ask you a question? And that's like, I would say the majority of people do not want to be on camera to say anything remotely related to politics. Because the last one I did, I think I just asked people what makes a good president. And even that, like, you could tell people were like, oh, terrified to answer and be on camera with their answer. I was like, you don't have to mention any specific politician. It's tough. So
yeah, but you know what? But you watch some of these late night shows, and they'll go like, Jimmy Fallon or whoever it is. I don't know. They go out on the street and they start asking people questions about geography or, some really basic stuff. And people just, of course, they only show the people. I mean, maybe they spend 2 hours asking people questions, and they give you 2 minutes of responses. They're going to give you the responses that they want to give, and that's an unfortunate thing, because it really makes people look a lot less intelligent than they are.
Yeah.
So for somebody like you, that's a problem, because you're like, come on, man, people aren't this dumb. Really, they're not. And
no, I always learn something from somebody I interview on the street. And I think, people are worried that they're going to look like an idiot. But I think it's time that all of us just admit that we're all idiots, when it comes to everything, even the thing we specialize in. The one thing we're supposed to specialize in is a career. We're all fairly mediocre at that as well. I mean, it's just time for some humility, I think, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it takes and it takes so much, man. It doesn't matter what you are, right? If you're a chef or a teacher or a painter or anything, it's just engineer. God, there's just so much more to know and to learn, and man, it's endless. I'm just blown away constantly by, like, I'll stumble across something every single day that I think, wow, how did I never study that? How did I never learn about this? And that's what keeps me going. I imagine that's what keeps you going, right? You just want to.
Yeah. Well, but also the fact that we're all still not getting along. I think the social studies, you probably would be biased to agree with this, but I think the social studies are by far the most important subjects to learn in school, because you don't have math or science or any other subject if we don't get along. If people aren't, I mean, I think, I tell you what is underrated in society is stability. Especially, you talk to someone who lives in Syria right now, like, they're going to tell you, I don't even care who's in power. I just want to be able to, like, walk to work every day and not worry about walking over a bomb or something. I mean,
Well, but if you think about it, when I walk out of my house, I walk downtown wherever I go. I mean, 99.999% of human behavior is quite civil.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's what historians, you all can distort this a little bit because you tend to focus on these moments where things happen, and where things happen are the critical moments, right? The average moments are pretty boring, and people just kind of living their lives and not doing anything. But the fact is, we're pretty people are pretty civil. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but nonetheless, but the issue is when we're not, and I think this is what you're saying, when things can pretty easily fall apart, and then we're really human beings are in trouble when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is they're seeing it on social media or on news network media all the time. Like, well, things must be bad, even though I don't see them when I go to the grocery store. I see it all over the media. It must be crazy. We must be on the brink of civil war, and so then they become more radicalized themselves, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
vicious cycle. But I always say, hey, if you want to really know what's going on in the news, don't watch the news. Don't consume it.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not going to get any. I mean, it's all. You just wait till the dust settles. That's what historians do. Things are all crazy. Right? Like, imagine being a historian, but you're trying to write history as it's happening right now. Because I would agree that we are living through a pretty exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
um,
here's an example of that. I was reading recently about the one case against Trump, and the case of his finances in New York, and they took him to trial and so on, right, for cooking the books. And so I read what would seem to me, by all accounts, to be a very thoughtful analysis of what he was being tried on, and what he apparently actually did. And now, like, after the fact, kind of going back and looking at it, and they couldn't none of that could have been said in the moment, because we had to get all the way through it to get to the end. We got to the end and said, like, okay, well, why was this just kind of a red herring in a way, to go after this guy in the way that they did, right? That's the conclusion they made, and it made a lot of sense to me, reading the different things that they picked out. But what really was important, I think, is that in the middle of it, I tried to follow it, and I could not get the information that I needed to follow it. But it was only, months and months later, that we can go back, the historians and so on, and investigators can go back and say, all right, here, hang on, let's put a timeline together, and then it started to make sense. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Just let the dust settle.
yeah, it's like
Um,
Trump. He's the only president in American history to be impeached twice. But now, after the second impeachment, after the what happened on January 6th, I think really overshadowed that first impeachment, which people forget. That first impeachment over the Russian interference in the election,
mhm.
that was like a year before, less than, because it was right before the pandemic that it was announced and everything, that Congress was not going to convict him. And you look back on it now that we have hindsight already, and it's like, yeah, that first impeachment wasn't nearly as big a deal, especially looking at the second impeachment where you had a
Yeah.
much more strong case. It's like, okay, well, yeah, because we're talking treason now. That's something that's actually spelled out in the Constitution, where the first impeachment was like, okay, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
gray area.
And the first impeachment helps to understand why so many people were skeptical of the second impeachment,
Exactly.
and yeah.
If
Yeah,
they never went after him before that, who knows if it might have been a different, um, decision.
yeah. Yeah, right. And with his finances, all the banks, they were all saying, like, "Hey, we don't have a problem with this. We got our money back. It's all good. Like, we made money on this." It's like, what are you going after this guy for, right? Like, so it's
Wow.
it's really. But, again, you got to get to the end, right? So this is all the problem in real time, and it's very difficult. Hey, how often do you have historians reaching out to you, telling you, "Okay, man, Mr. B, you missed this, or you got that right," or
Usually it's I know this word sounds bad. Amateur historians
Yeah.
that reach
Okay.
out.
Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes they do have criticisms. They have stuff they want to add. Other times, yeah, they're like, yeah, you did a good job. So, but I would say like one of the frustrating things still is that a lot of historians are skeptical of just all of YouTube. They don't want to,
Yeah.
like, I will regularly reach out to historians to interview them for videos, and I rarely get responses back. I mean, I have interviewed a few over the years. I'm doing a fellowship here at the University of Kansas. I was telling you off air beforehand in the spring, and I think it's going to be a pretty good turnout. It's about the presidency. I've been already reaching out to presidential historians. Haven't heard anything back. So, like, if you know any presidential historians there at Penn, just let me know.
Yeah.
I swear, like the ivory tower, like this is why I did a conference, and I was pleading to public historians, like, please just get them talking to us. This is a bridge that has,
Yeah.
it's not there, and it should have been there years ago. Because what, were you going to go to the History Channel? The History Channel hasn't shown history content for years.
No. They're gonna
online on YouTube.
They're going to sit in their offices or in their research archives, collect the data, write the stories, publish the book, sell, 500 copies to kind of a lot of libraries, maybe 1,000, 1,500, I don't know, sell it to the libraries and a few other people, and give one to their, their mother-in-law or father-in-law or something. I don't know. And then that's it. This is these academics. Right.
And then those ideas will be trapped in books until the end of time. I just think that there are like a lot of good, like I'm reading this book here. I put it up here. I'm going to be making a video about con artists. I think it's a pretty timely thing to look at. And I guarantee you this, if I were to reach out to this author, I would not get a response.
Yeah.
Because I'm just some schmuck on YouTube. Doesn't matter that I have over 1 million subscribers. They don't care. Like there's still a point, like in society, we don't value YouTubers like we do academics.
Yeah.
Even though some of the best academic work that's happening right now is on this very platform.
Yeah.
Crazy.
No, it is very bizarre, man. You have 1 million subscribers. Do they think you're subscribed? These are people subscribing to a history channel on YouTube. They think they're all idiots, your subscribers? Like, what are folks thinking? Like,
I don't know. I will say my audience, I mean, don't mean to brag, but they're pretty smart. Like,
of course they are.
They're a lot from them.
Yeah. No. Listen, they're not going to subscribe to a history in like political history, right? And political YouTube channel if they're not. You're not out playing with dogs, right? This isn't like a dog and cat video channel, right? It's history, man. And okay, your videos they're kind of fun to watch, really. And you tell plenty of dad jokes throughout, which makes it a lot of fun. But you're also self-deprecating, so you're not arrogant. You're not claiming to be an ivory tower historian. But you're doing history for the people, for people who will watch, you know what I mean? Who are not going to read their books, right?
Yeah. One of my biggest pet peeves is anytime somebody tries to hide history, gatekeep it. History is for everyone. And if you're trying, like, that's one thing we were mentioning the LDS church earlier. One thing I got to give them praise for is that they're really good about just saying, hey, here's all the information. Feel free to research it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But we did that, and then we found out things that maybe don't make them look that good, and so that's why they got so mad. I was like, dude, this is like, there's a lot of evidence. It's not like the Old Testament or something.
Yeah. Well, anyway, okay, so that's cool. So you have that going. I think with our videos that we're making, I think the people are fascinated to listen to young people, right? And it's just, I would think after a while it would be difficult to be listening over and over again to my students talking about things. And I don't do very many videos where I'm talking, so you really would even get a chance to hear my opinion, even though, again, my opinion would shift throughout. But you get to hear, and but in academia, we don't want to listen to undergraduates. We don't even, professors don't even really want to listen to graduate students, but graduate students clearly are more tolerable than undergraduate students who just are seen to be empty slates with, nothing to contribute. Whereas I don't see that. We have students from all over the world, and they see something from their perspective, from their point of view, and their lived experience. And so it's like, well, bring that out, show it to us, tell us what's going on. Yeah. So, all right. So hang on. So you don't get much from historians who would tell you, because they're not even watching, which is pretty pathetic, honest to God. That's really. Hey,
Hey, a
Jeff,
comment that we were talking about earlier about YouTube and it being a platform for education is the fact that YouTubers are able to take very complex issues, shorten it down into 10, 20-minute videos, but the value is the replayability, is the fact that they can always go back and just rewatch and think about, things in a different way, especially if it's not the first time they've watched a video. So like I was talking about in the chat, how I watch a lot of religion and philosophy videos, and there'll be some videos that I watch and like a year later it'll pop back up. I'll watch it again and I'll get something completely different out of it. And then I do have a question for Mr. Beat. So for class number 21 of this past semester, it was the day of the election. And Sam was out. It was like 2 or 3 hours before the first polls closed, so we had no idea who was going to win. Trumpers were all saying that it was in the bag. Harris people were saying it was in the bag. Sam was talking about neoliberalism and how the influence of our more modern day form of capitalism was influenced by the government during and after the Great Depression. There were some people that were talking about in the comment section how, in fact, the government hurt the Great Depression and our recovery from it. And so I wanted to know, because I remember in the 10th grade, it was American History 2, so it was World War II and to modern day times. And I had this big, long debate with my teacher because I was extremely fiscal conservative, so like almost no taxes. People should be able to keep all of their money, period. And so I was like, no, the Great Depression was definitely hurt by the government because they used more tax money. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that little scuffle I saw in our community.
Oh, and they were saying, some people were saying it was World War II that got us out of the Depression, right? Yeah.
Yeah, most economists say that's actually what officially ended the Great Depression was World War II.
Officially ended it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree that that's probably the most sound argument I've heard. I used to be like you, Jeff, where when I was younger, I was very libertarian, and a very influential book on me was Amity Schell's The Forgotten Man. She's a historian, I don't know where, but she also has a great biography on Calvin Coolidge, and so that heavily influenced me as a young man reading those books. But I think what we try to oversimplify it, and the older I've gotten, I've read. After that, I went back and read a lot of Franklin Roosevelt, what he actually said in his fireside chats, what he was like, every speech he gave, and it really I'll never forget how much it changed my opinion, and I became less sure of anything. Because FDR is still vilified to this day because a lot of conservatives say, "Oh, the government did too much." I would say, as with anything, there are winners and losers. Clearly, there were winners because of the New Deal programs. It's harder sometimes to see who loses out whenever the federal government does take on so much spending. That's the thing, and it growing in so much scope. Obviously, there are always going to be unintended consequences. So I think when we make broad assertions like, "Oh, the New Deal prolonged the Great Depression," I think that's somewhat correct. I think that claim is partially true, but it's only part of the story. And this debate is good to have because it really forces us to confront our beliefs. But I really think the debate will never end.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the things for me is I see the world through a sociological lens all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so from a sociological lens, it's like, well, listen, this is how society operates, we go through it's organized in this way, and it's going to lean a little bit this way or lean a little bit this way, but there's a basic organization of the machine. It's going to function in the way that it does. And so sometimes I step into some of these debates in ways that I'm like, I don't even know they're debates, but I'm like, look, this is just a society thing, man. Like a few weeks ago, just in office hours, I was just talking about the Revolutionary War, and people just I just kind of walk through. Look, this is where people were living on the land, cut off. Like you don't have newspapers every day. You don't have information. You have nothing. Like you are just cut off. And imagine someone walking up to you one day and saying, "Hey, we need to recruit you to come fight against the British." Right? Like who's gonna jump into that? You're working your farm, man. You're busy. You're living your life. You have no interest in that. You don't have this allegiance to this government in Washington, who are these elites. Like you just like don't even know anything about it. So like for me, I'm always living in this world of sociology, the lived experience of life, and it really shapes how I see things, because what happened in the past is we would operate the same way today as in the past, kind of thing, right? Just put yourself in that perspective back there. So anyway, that's one of the things that I get lost in, right? All right. And I have a lot of fun with, but I don't know these kind of debates that of sorts, like
The things
that.
I get lost in, there's two things. One, because I have a journalism background, that was my first degree. I think constantly about how we're manipulated, how most people are, the vast majority of us, myself included, are easily manipulated, whether we're willing to admit it or not.
Yeah.
We often believe what we want to believe. And because of that, I think that I actually have a hypothesis that has not really been studied that I'd like to explore more, which is I think the most powerful people in world history were just the best generally at communicating.
Yeah.
They were able to get their ideas across. And so I'm always thinking about that's why I think the genius of Trump more than anything has been that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm always thinking about is economics. I mean, we always try to overcomplicate things, and we're trying to predict who's winning the next election. I actually predicted wrong purely on economic data this time, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But every previous presidential election, going back to World War II, they predicted who would win by looking at inflation and unemployment. That's it. So I always say the quickest way to learn history is to study economics. That will tell you more than anything, because that also is a big cause of pretty much every war, revolution, any kind of conflict in world history. You have some kind of economic despair by a large swath of the population. So I'm sure what I just said is controversial to some people watching.
Yeah, maybe, but right, to some people it would be, but not to the historians, because they're not watching, right? Because they don't care. Right. The so-called professional historians. Oh man!
But another problem is the historians are so niche. Like they're so specialized in such a, like my friend Cypher, he actually runs a YouTube channel, but he also has a PhD. He specializes in political violence in the American Southwest. He could tell you anything you need to know about that. Get him talking about other types of history, though. Okay, it's more shaky. And that's how every historian is. You all have your little specific field. Whereas I'm trying to be a generalist. I'm trying to get a little bit of everything. I think that that's also appealing to more people, because hey, and that's why a lot of people I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot right now, but I'm
keep going, because I'm going to respond.
A lot of people are freaking out right now about how short attention spans are.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be, because to me, if you are really passionate about something and you find out you're really good at it, combined, you're this is what I'm going to be specializing in my life. Whereas everything else, we're not going to be an expert on anything else. So who cares if you're scrolling and you're getting 10 seconds of this information, 10 seconds, because you're getting a little bit of, if anything, you're more well-rounded because of that's my.
No, that's actually a pretty cool perspective on it. It's kind of a similar perspective that I have when we talk about young people can't communicate. And I'm like, young people are communicating all the time on their phones, man. They're the
Mhm.
most amazing communicators, actually, compared to whatever. I mean, if we just turn the script a little bit, or you know, I yeah, hang on, I was going to say something about being a generalist. I call myself a generalist also. I had my areas of expertise, but I long ago abandoned those, and I just found it more interesting to just dig in on issues all over the world, a wide range of issues. So in my profession of sociology, people tend to specialize in something,
Yeah.
and I can't do that. But then people accuse, people will sometimes say to me, "Hey, but you're out of your element. Like, you're talking about things that you don't have expertise about." And I say,
Oh,
"Yeah, well, I'm not talking deeply about them. I'm
exactly.
I'm talking about them in a very general way, but I'm putting ideas together in very
That's the
thoughtful
gatekeeping I
ways."
was talking about earlier. They're
Yeah.
trying to gatekeep the information. No, like, you should be excited that we're even bringing this up, because again, it would be trapped in books, or where, like, no one would know about this stuff unless we're me bringing up Georgism, an obscure economic theory from the 1880s. I think a big reason why the kids even are. Do you know about Georgism, by the way?
Yeah.
Henry George,
Yeah. No,
Progress
I
and
know
Poverty.
nothing about
See,
Georgism, by
I
the
have a
way.
video about that, but no, like, I didn't know much about it either, but I had like you know, a bunch of viewers that say, "You should check this out." And there's like a whole movement online, and wow, it's impressive. Most of the folks that are passionate about it are under the age of 30. And there's actually an organization still around that was founded by Henry George himself, the economist that
Uh-huh.
these ideas come from. And it was hanging by a thread until these young people came, like, and they just discovered it online. I don't know how it, like, the revival truly began, but this um if you go to the Georgism subreddit, there's people that talk about this. Like, they had like 80-year-olds in there that were clinging on to these ideas from the 1800s, like, afraid that these ideas would be lost forever. And
Whoa,
here
that's
comes,
cool.
and a similar thing too, like, Mike Gravel was a guy who ran for president in 2008, and he was old then. But
Wait, who
he
is it?
Mike Gravel. He was a
Oh,
member of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Congress.
okay.
Yeah, from
Yeah,
Alaska. He made a name for himself during the Vietnam War, reading the Pentagon Papers out loud on the record. And
yeah.
but he ran for president in 2008. Went nowhere. The campaign went nowhere. He got like 1% in the polls when he ran in the primaries for the Democratic Party. But then flash forward to 2020, and Mike Gravel's still alive. He's 90 years old. And these teenagers are like, "No, we're going to run Mike Gravel for president again in 2020." It's just, so stuff like that. I just feel like a lot of the most exciting uh, developments in terms of, like, just the synthesis of a bunch of great ideas
Yeah, yeah,
are happening with young people and on platforms like this. I can't stress it enough.
yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I see it. I see it with my students, man. I ask them questions, and it's it's mind-blowing, actually, that they always have something to say. I wouldn't say always, maybe like 15-20% of the time they have something, but it's really kind of, I caught them off guard. It's not where they're at, but 80% of the time, man, they have something to say, and it's reasonable, and it's interesting, and half of the time they have something really insightful to say, and I think, wow, if we never asked them, we'd never know, and then where would we be? So yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I like that. The other thing for me that about being a generalist is that I know that whatever topic I pick out, and so you must have this. I mean, we both have it. Whatever topic we pick out, there's an expert on that topic who's going to watch,
Yeah,
and you got to up the game a little bit,
you
because
do.
even though the expert's probably not going to reach out to us because the expert's going to, whatever, not pay attention. But it's always in my mind. So I never go too far. I never say too much, but I have to make something really, really simple and really clear. Because for me, my students, in the room, they'll just pick up their phones and start looking at their phones, man, once they get bored. So I have to keep it interesting, right? For you, they'll just turn off your video and move on to something else.
Yeah. That's the key to telling a good story. I think whenever I have my family sit down on the couch and we try to watch a movie together. My kids are 13 and 10, so they're getting a little older now. We let them have phones or whatever, but they have time limits. Okay. But anyway, yeah, everybody's kind of at the beginning of the movie. They're on their phones. Like they're kind of like, dividing up their attention. But if it's a good enough movie, 30 minutes in, 45 minutes in, they are now fully glued to the movie and they will not pick up that phone for the rest of the movie. So I think it's all about, that's how we learn the best as human beings is, I think you probably agree, like through stories. We've always just told each other stories. And if you can, that's what I've been trying to work on more than anything the last couple of years with my channel. I realized that, people are going to click away if you're not telling a good story.
Yeah. That's right. And some of the stories that don't appear to be interesting can be really interesting when it's a good storyteller,
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the musical Hamilton, is an example of that, right? Like, who would have ever thought of a musical and Alexander Hamilton? Like, what? And I know it's embellished in different ways, but nonetheless, man, it's a history musical, right?
Based on a book by an historian, Ron Chernow, I think, is the one who wrote the book that, what's his name? Lin-Manuel Miranda. He said I read an interview where he was at the airport or something, and he just like, how you're at the airport, you have a long flight, maybe I'll just buy a book and read a book on the plane. And that's what he did. He just happened to grab his Hamilton book, and then that experience inspired him to write this musical, which is one of the most successful musicals of all time, not just historical things. I think it's incredible. The success of Hamilton has been really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, in a way, then, if you think about it, the fact that you are able to get younger people to watch videos about history, I mean, that's also really inspiring, and the fact that I can get older people to come in and watch a classroom is inspiring.
To listen to younger people, that is inspiring.
Yeah. Man, do you have any questions for me? Any specific questions?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, really anxious right now about the upcoming presidency, and especially marginalized communities, specifically like the transgender community. And I just wonder, like, what are your thoughts about like what should be the best way for them to move forward in these troubling times? Because it seems like we're going to be kind of going backwards a little bit for marginalized communities, undocumented immigrants as well.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna. Okay, so I have my own personal thoughts on this that I'll do my best to actually put a personal thought or opinion out. I think that what we've seen with politicians, and certainly what we've seen with Donald Trump, is that he makes a lot of grandiose statements. We're going to be the biggest this and the greatest that, and the biggest like return of immigrants back to their own countries as we'll ever see in human history. And he's verbose in that kind of way, right? But mostly. Is going to get on with the business of governing day to day. And a lot of that stuff, a lot of the big fearful things, the big proclamations, they're going to happen to the same degree that they happened during his first 4 years, which was like, mostly it was not a very eventful presidency. So I don't have a lot of fears, in other words, of these like, oh man, life being turned on its head for any group. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I just, I always tell folks that are worried, zoom out. That's what people that study history all the time are constantly doing. And I found myself chiming in more on current events on social media this past year, more than I ever had before. And part of it was like, I felt obligated maybe to, now that I have some influence, that maybe I should chime in. And, but even then, like, it was just really difficult because I didn't want to upset anyone. You inevitably upset people. I think at the root of it, though, is, if it does get bad, if it gets to a point where I feel like I would provide more value commenting on current stuff than the past, because you're trying to get these lessons. Like, the whole point of learning history is to teach lessons. Otherwise, how would we learn history otherwise? And so when you see people in the present day that are clearly, they have not learned these lessons of the past, and you tell them the stories, and you're like, okay, here's when we tried tariffs, and it caused the depression to get worse, and that still doesn't work. Like, people are still like, oh, this time is going to be different. At that point, like, I don't know. I feel like there's a greater obligation by people that study history to speak up. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's true, but no one's going to listen to them. So they're certainly not going to listen to the professional historians. They might listen to you. I mean, more will listen to you, actually, because clearly, look at the number of views that you get on your channel. And a lot of those views are actually inside of classrooms. So it's not just one person, but it's many people who are, getting something from the same view. So, that's the problem. So, at best, people like yourself can kind of point that stuff out, and I can point stuff out, and I do. Like, here, I'm going to give you an example. Someone posted in the chat, I like Sammy. He's a good dude, but he kind of sucks when it comes to trans issues, right?
Oh.
So let me say that. So right now, here's the way I see this with the Trump administration, right? I don't know what's going to happen. First off, trans issues. There's no big issue, right? I don't know how trans issues are going to affect anybody, really. People think that they are because, we're building it out, but mostly it's pretty small in scale. Not many people are being impacted. It's like the news. It's like murders in the news, right? Every day there's a murder in New York City or Detroit or somewhere, but like, New York City is a really safe city, right? But there's a murder, and the murder in all likelihood happened in some area in the city that's unsafe, right? So in any case, we think about like the military. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine today, and we say like, wow, but like we're getting, we're people in prisons or the military are being, have the opportunity. I saw this, it was argued, recently by one of these politicians, right? People in prisons have the opportunity to get transition therapy, right? And to transition over, and taxpayers have to pay for that. And like, this is a problem. And, the prisons across the United States and allows this, and they have the legal right to do this, right? And do you know how many people have been prisoners have transitioned at the cost of American taxpayers in the past X number of years? Do you have any idea?
Probably less than 100, I bet.
Yeah, it's two.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago. You know what I mean? It's just a non-issue, right? It's just
it's a moral panic. It's
a moral panic.
Yeah.
And
so they've been attacking a straw man. And so, yeah.
So,
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I have this idea that, look, you can't, if you're only attacking a straw man, you really can't attack anything of concrete substance. And so therefore your attack is going to wither out. You have nothing to do. I mean, what kind of laws are you going to pass? What kind of things are you going to do? Like, there's not much of anything. And so the attacks on the trans community will really go away once people start to have not entirely go away. I mean, they're going to push back on some things, right, that are going to be problematic, and people will be hurt, and or we will go in a different direction, right? Some people will be benefit because they will get what they want, and other people will be harmed because they will get what they don't want. But mostly we're heading in a particular direction where we're moving to make things much more open. And I think that's so yeah. So
There are
this is the
exceptions.
thing.
I would say what you're saying about the federal government is absolutely true, but there have been in the last 4 years a lot of laws at the state level that have specifically targeted the transgender
Yeah, well,
community.
this is the issue right here.
Yeah,
This is
at the
what
state
this is
level.
going to be the issue.
Yeah.
Mhm. And but what I think is, I don't know this, right? Well, and then you ask, like, what should we do? Well, activists have to step up, man. I mean, you have to step up, and people who are not activists have to step up. So what I step up and say in my world is like, wait, how is this harming you? You know, the moral panic people, like, how is this harming you, man?
Yeah.
How are people, you know, like, how are you being hurt by people in the LGBT community? Really?
Just
Um,
existing.
just existing, right? And
Yeah.
this is a problem, man. And so, but I have the idea that society is moving in a direction such that we're going to hit bumps and we're going to sometimes go backwards, but all in all, we're heading in a particular direction and we're going to remain. We're not going to stop, man. We're not going back. We're not going to be backwards permanently. We're going to just take a few steps back, and then we're going to keep going. That's my take as on history
Like
and
me.
social development. Would you say that as a historian?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
5 years, things could be dramatically different. And I just think about how the 2010s actually were quite in terms of social issues, things did kind of, I think, change more quickly than previous decades in terms of you had the legalization of same-sex marriage, not just the United States, but around the world, different countries. You had decriminalization of drugs.
Mm-hmm,
And then
mm-hmm.
combined with that, just a larger awareness of the broader LGBT plus community, especially transgender community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like what we're seeing now is a reaction to the people that like, oh, and then I think that the most disillusioned group of all in the United States, at least, I can't speak for around the world, but it's clearly young men who, cis men in particular, who feel like they still view the world as a zero-sum game. They still view it as like, well, you're winning, so that means I must be losing.
Yeah.
And because of that, like they feel like they're getting left behind now.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. And then
you hear students bring that up?
Yeah, they bring it up a fair amount. You know what? When I ask them, when I put them on the spot, we put them in the front of the room, and on the spot, we say, here, sit on the table, let's talk about this. They all see that, like, yeah, okay, maybe it's really not. This isn't. But I'm not being left behind. You know what I mean. So no, it's hard to. People are very reasonable when you actually give them the microphone and ask them to speak. Yeah, I find that. So, but anyway, but this idea that we are going to we're headed toward a more open world. Accepting of ethnicity, culture, race, gender, disability. I mean, that's just where we're headed. We're not going backwards. We're going in that space. So any system or ideology that's based on racism or sexism or homophobia or transphobia or whatever, it's in the end, it's going to be dead in the water. It's just going to weaken. And so it may look like, oh my God, it's getting so strong, but it's not. We're going in a particular direction, and the direction is greater openness and greater acceptance. This is globalization, right? It's globalization of culture, of people, of ideologies, and even though it doesn't seem that way sometimes, right? But really, it only doesn't seem that way when we're reading the headlines. But when you're actually talking to people, the average people, not the people on the extremes, but the people in the moderate 75%. It seems like that's my take on it. Do you ever, would you disagree with that?
I agree that the momentum is there. It's hard to go back, especially when we're talking about freedom, which almost everybody agrees that freedom is a good thing, freedom from and freedom to. And especially in terms of economic freedom, which you have economic freedom after a while. I feel that inevitably leads to social freedoms and other freedom, like political freedoms, because over time people realize, especially if you grow up within that, then you just take it for granted that, like, oh yeah, no, we should be able to just go where we want to go and buy what we want to buy, see what we want to see. I mean, I see this difference with my own children. Like, already they just expect, also the fact that they are not surprised by, like, my 13-year-old, it's almost like she's this wise old person who's seen everything already before. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I was not that advanced when I was 13 years old. So when you're talking to your students, like, they grew up with the internet, they grew up expecting, demanding freedom. It's not, we aren't going back. You're right. We're not.
That's the thing. And so when you ask that's often my message to people. When I look at the next 4 years, it's like, hey, there's going to be a lot of, a lot of struggle, a lot of trouble. And, like, listen, man, Lori and my wife and I were down on the border, and we stepped over into Mexico and Ciudad Juarez, and we were talking to people, right? And we met this guy. He had come up from Peru, and man, he used his life, really poor campesino from Peru. We were in Mexico now, right? And so he had nothing, man. He had nothing. He got every little bit of money that he could. He had his wife and his 3 kids were back, and they had this real small plot of land, and he just came to the border with the hope of somehow getting across the border in some way, getting to the U.S. and getting somewhere where he could work and send money home. And I'm like, man, I don't care how poor you are. The fact that you, and I've spent a lot of time in rural Latin America, so I met lots and lots of people like this, right? But that's just a bad idea for you to do that, leave your family behind. And so, like, kind of sending the message out to people that we're shutting down this border, man. We're not going to let you come here and do the kinds of thing, just get across the border, right, in the way that you anticipate we are. Well, it would mean a guy like this wouldn't spend his last dollar, and who knows, at this point in time, they may have mortgaged off, or like somehow their land. They might not, at this point, they might not even have any land, right? And so it's like, that's just a bad idea to have that kind of stuff happen. So every positive thing, every negative thing, or what appears to be really negative, right? All of the rhetoric about the border and so on also has positive consequences, because this guy would never have come up to the border and he'd be back home, which is negative because he's poor. But like, at the same time, it's like, dude, the hell, right? So it's just being willing to see the complexities of so many different things, Did that make sense, by the way? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I get it. You're tough on the border. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, like, there's always winners and losers for no matter what decision you make.
Yeah. And sometimes the winners and losers are not the people that we can readily identify. You've got to really look for them and seek them out, and I guess that's the reason for folks like you and I to try to be able to pick out some of these things that maybe we wouldn't think about otherwise.
Yeah, and it's like, I always a good example to kind of complement what you just said is, right now we have a lot of people that are against free trade and NAFTA in particular, because they saw what happened afterwards. They saw their small town slowly die because the factory shut down and all the good jobs went away, and they saw dad become addicted to fentanyl because he was laid off from his job. He couldn't find work after that. And this has happened all across the Western world. And so they just like, well, because of this, NAFTA bad. Yeah. That's it. It's oversimplified, when the reality is, like, there's also positives. Like, there's been, I mean, undoubtedly things have gotten a lot cheaper. The reason why a lot of us are getting Christmas gifts here in a couple of days is because of free trade.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just feel, we just need to constantly, and also a lot of times if you do something like a lot of what Joe Biden and Congress, his first 2 years in office, what they accomplished, we are not even seeing the benefits of that yet. We may not see it for another 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so how can we even begin to assess like how effective of a president Joe Biden was now?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Giving some time. Okay, let's see if this actually worked or not.
I saw some liberal commentator was making an argument about how the incoming Trump administration has already harmed us because of inflation or something. They were making these arguments to things. And I'm like, dude, the guy's not even in power yet. You know what I mean? You're looking at an indicator that really is based on things that happened a year ago. You know?
Yeah.
It's that kind of nonsense that we lose. But that's what kind of makes it fun. I keep us in the game. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, man, we're here at 17:30, almost our time. So what are you, 2 hours behind, 1 hour behind?
I think just one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 4:30 where you are.
It is.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, man, it's good talking to you. Nice, really fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your perspective and your work, man. And the amount of work that goes into your videos, man. Oh my God. It's really it's impressive. And I think if you don't make videos, you don't realize what it is. And I appreciate your dad jokes, man. Do your kids like your dad jokes?
No. They do not like
I did not have to ask that question, by the way.
Yeah. But thank you for all the kind words. And it's truly an honor to speak with you again. I just wish more professors were like you across the country, that you're just not afraid. That's why I like just let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You're going to let us talk about that?
Yeah. 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 I hear you, man. Yeah. It's a lot easier to talk about it when I'm not putting opinions out, but just rather asking people, hey, what do you see? What do you see from where you stand? That's everything. I learned that vision and the question, and from my wife, I have to say, who's really the facilitator and just sees us endlessly asking people that question. Yeah. What do you see? Unfortunately for you, you can't really ask that on history questions, because most of us would be like, I don't see anything, man. I have no idea what FDR was thinking back in the day. I've never studied it. There's nothing. So we can't contribute anything. But for me, I can ask people. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, man, what's your next video you're working on?
My next video is going to be about pardons, the power of the pardon, and should we, like, the pros and cons? What's a good thing about a president having a pardon power? What's a bad thing about it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good. That's cool. It's also another timely. Hey, wait, let me ask you this, right? So you're in it. This is my final question to you. It feels like Biden's just really walking off the plank on this pardon issue, because now we're not doing the historian thing and looking backward, which would require me to look at other presidents and see how many people they pardoned and who they pardoned and so on and so forth, right? But right now it feels like he's kind of walking off into the deep end. Is that what you see, or would you say no, go back and look at the other folks, man?
Yeah, no, he has pardoned more than any other president in American history, unless you count all the pardons of Confederate soldiers at the end of the Civil War. Andrew Johnson pardoned a bunch of Confederates, but that a lot of historians kind of separate that as a unique circumstance. But yeah, if you don't count that, Joe Biden has pardoned more people than any other president in American history by far. It's not even close. FDR was second, and he has like less than half of the pardons. And Biden still has another month in office. So it is definitely, that's one thing that motivated me to make this now. I was like, yeah, this is fascinating. Plus, like, he pardoned his own son. It was very controversial.
Yeah.
But then we also
yeah.
have Trump is coming in, who, when he was in office, he pardoned Jared Kushner's dad, who
Yeah.
now is going to be working in his administration. So,
Yeah.
it's very timely. I do that on purpose. So.
Yeah. Well, it's really, man, that's wild. Yeah, really wild. And I'm sure he's going to pardon some more folks. Yeah, we'll see.
Probably.
You got to think he's going to give some sort of clemency or something to Liz Cheney.
Oh,
right?
Possibly just kind of a blanket thing. Yeah.
Yeah, blanket thing, like nobody can go after her. I feel like he's probably going to do that, but who knows? I don't pay too much attention, but yeah.
And that's why you're well informed.
Yeah. That's why I need people like you. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. But this is wild. In the part of me, so here's me right now. We're going on here for a second, but I will say, yeah, it seems that is an excessive amount of pardons, but I can't say that. I know just enough to know I got to go back and look at history to see whether that's true or not. So I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, and then don't get caught in making these really dumb comments and statements, right? And that's what I learned from people like you, is that there's a lot that we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And I was being a little sensationalist, because thousands of those pardons are actually not that big of a deal. It was people that were given house arrest during the pandemic, and
that's right.
So
it's that's right. It's not, they're not the vast majority of those folks. It was really kind of a very minimal thing, very inconsequential. Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah. But nonetheless, that's not how Fox News would treat it. You know what I mean? These are hardened criminals.
History. He is a tyrant.
Hardened criminals who will be on the streets coming after your families. Yeah. Oh my God. All right. Well, listen, man. Take care of yourself. Have a great holiday, and
you too.
Enjoy. We'll look forward to more videos. All right.
Same.
Yeah. Take care, man.
You too.